The Piketty conclude that introduction of progressive tax on the global wealth would regain the control over the capitalism in the name of the general interest, while relying on the forces of private property and competition, both of which are, as we discussed in week 3, the key norms of neoliberal globalization. So now, let's turn our attention to the criticism addressed against his work in order to consider the possible scenarios for more equal and humane global orders. As King points out in our third reading for today, since its publication, Piketty's book has generated large critical literature. So in this section, based upon the required and recommended readings for this week, along with what we have studied in this subject, let's problematize Piketty's analysis of global inequalities from 4 separate yet related viewpoints. First, the Piketty regard transnational labor migration as a peaceful form of redistribution and regulation of the global wealth inequality. In his view, it is sometimes simpler to allow labor to move to the place where wages are higher. Here, we should recall our discussion about the rise of new migrant division of labor in the global cities. Based upon this discussion, it is crucial to point out that Piketty's simplistic reduction of migrants from the global south as an embodiment of labor force in the economic term completely dismisses their struggle at the bottom end of the labor market in the global north. Second, as King notes in the third reading, there are whole areas of human existence about which Piketty had nothing to say. In the recommended reading, parents argue that more attention to the gendered nature of inequality would enrich Piketty's analysis. Piketty notes that in most countries, women are in fact significantly overrepresented in the bottom 50% of the earners, but Piketty does not explore fully why this is the case. So in this respect, we should draw on our previous investigation about transnational commodification of care work. That is, it can be argued that Piketty largely ignores the way in which inequality is experienced differently, depending on not only on the class, but also on the other aspect of identity, including gender. Third, closely related to the previous 2 points, Piketty's insufficient account of production. More specifically, structure of unequal power relationship between the capital and labor in the production process is problematized by the Harvey in our second reading. For Harvey, central problem of Piketty's argument is due to his mistaken definition of capital. As Harvey elaborates, capital is a process, not the things. It is a process of circulation in which money is used to make more money, often but not exclusively, through the exploitation of the labor power. So here I believe that our discussion about modern slavery and growth of precariat provide important insight to expand this criticism. In other words, Piketty's understanding of capital as an income or various form of asset held by the private individuals, corporation, and state, rather than the process that constitute and reinforced by the social relations of domination and exploitation, does not allow him to precisely explain what social forces produce and sustain what he called the central contradiction of capitalism. That is to say, its historically ongoing trend to the ever greater levels of inequality. Fourth, in one of our recommended readings, Ortega argued that although Piketty likely debunked the widely held argument for the perpetual growth, he doesn't take into the serious consideration the real limit on the growth, namely our ecological crisis. Ortega note, while we should aim to tackle the gap between the rich and poor, we must also address the much bigger gap. That is to say, the gap between what is demanded by our planet and what is demanded by our economy. So, building upon this review of Piketty's work and its criticism, as well as employing our accumulated knowledge about contemporary politics of global inequality, let's have a discussion around the following two questions in the tutorial. So is Piketty's analysis of global inequality convincing? Second, would Piketty's proposal for the global tax on capital be sufficient tool in tackling global inequality in 21st century? As King noted in the third reading, is his proposal for the progressive global tax on the wealth the politically unrealistic strategy to tackle the current situation of intensified inequalities on the global scale? So we will discuss these questions in our online tutorial. So please prepare and bring your thought to our session. Okay, so finally, let's go back to this week's yes/no question and think whether your answer to these questions have been changed or unchanged after going through today's lecture. Okay, so thank you very much for going through the material for the lecture in these books. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe and be positive. I will see you at online tutorials. Bye.